Gabriel Rocha never imagined he would be standing there in front of the foggy bathroom mirror at home, adjusting for the 10th time the tie that insisted on staying crooked. His hands, always steady when holding heavy tools, trembled slightly as they tried to master that piece of fabric that seemed to have a life of its own. He looked at his own reflection, carefully combed hair, white shirt he'd been saving for years for special occasions, shoes polished the night before, and felt something strange in his chest, a mixture of timid hope and silent distrust. At 31 years old, Gabriel carried on his shoulders the weight of someone who learned early that life didn't distribute golden invitations to men like him. But there was the printed paper, with elegant letters promising a special social recognition dinner, and for one brief moment, fragile as glass, he allowed hope to shine. The workshop where he worked was in a working-class neighborhood where the smell of oil mixed with the aroma of bread coming out of ovens in the morning, where every corner kept stories of honest people who woke up before the sun. Gabriel knew every sound of that place. The noise of old buses passing by, the laughter of children playing ball in the street, the clanking of tools echoing through the thin walls of his small workshop. It was there that he fixed cars, motorcycles, bicycles, anything that had wheels and needed careful hands. The corporate young people who passed by came from another world. Impeccable suits, expensive perfumes, loud laughter that seemed to occupy more space than they should. They made jokes, left minimal tips with condescending smiles, and Gabriel always responded with a calm nod, without anger, without apparent hurt. He had learned that dignity didn't need to shout to exist. When Gabriel entered the restaurant, he felt the air change around him as if he had crossed an invisible border between two universes. The lights were soft and golden, reflecting in crystal glasses and silverware that shone like small stars on immaculate white tablecloths. The sound was different too. Low conversations, discreet, punctuated by contained laughter and the delicate tinkling of fine porcelain. He held tight to the invitation paper while the maitre d' led him to a table in the center of the hall, where a blonde woman, dressed with calculated elegance, was already seated. Her eyes scanned him from top to bottom in less than 3 seconds. Enough time for Gabriel to see contempt forming like ice. She grabbed her purse, stood up with a cruel smile on her lips, and said loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear, "Sorry, love, but this isn't going to work." And she left, leaving behind the sound of high heels against marble and a heavy silence that fell over Gabriel like a lead curtain. Gabriel stayed there alone, feeling the curious and pitying looks of other customers piercing his skin like fine needles. His fingers gripped the edge of the white tablecloth as he fought the urge to run out, to disappear, to never again believe in invitations that seemed too good to be true. He thought of his mother at home, fragile and tired, who always said he deserved good things, that kindness attracted kindness. He thought of the jokes he heard at the workshop, the laughter that echoed when he turned his back, and felt an old pain tighten his chest. That feeling of being invisible even while standing right there, of not being seen as worthy of anything beyond his calloused hands and his honest work. The waiter approached with a professional but uncomfortable smile, and Gabriel was about to get up when he heard a child's voice, crystalline and full of light, cross the hall like a ray of sunshine piercing a heavy cloud. "Mommy, look! I like him! I want to sit with him!" The voice belonged to a small girl with big, bright eyes who was pulling the hand of an elegant woman with dark hair and a surprised expression. Gabriel looked up and met the child's eyes, Clara, although he didn't know her name yet, and saw something he didn't expect to find there. Pure acceptance, without filters, without judgments. The girl smiled at him as if she had known him for years, as if he were someone special, someone important. And behind her, the mother, Laura, although still a stranger, looked at her daughter with surprise, then at Gabriel, and something changed in her eyes. A genuine curiosity mixed with something deeper that Gabriel couldn't name. The restaurant continued there, with its golden lights and discreet whispers, but suddenly it seemed that the universe had just rewritten the script for the night, transforming humiliation into possibility, loneliness into connection. And Gabriel felt, for the first time in a long time, that perhaps, just perhaps, there was space for him too in that world of light. Laura Farias hadn't planned to be there that night, much less with Clara hanging on her arm, asking to sit with a complete stranger. She had reserved that table weeks ago, an attempt to create a special moment with her daughter, away from the constant pressure of the company, away from the watchful eyes of the family, away from everything that made her feel like she was living someone else's life. But Clara had that inexplicable gift of seeing things that adults no longer saw. Kindness hidden under simple clothes, light in tired eyes, truth in honest silences. And now she was pulling her mother toward that solitary man who seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and Laura felt something strange happen inside her chest, as if a door locked for years was creaking open. She looked at Gabriel. She still didn't know his name, and saw vulnerability mixed with dignity, recent humiliation still shining in his eyes, but without a drop of self-pity. There was something about him that intrigued her, something that made her want to stay. "I'm sorry, my daughter is sometimes very direct," Laura said, her voice carrying that polite tone she had learned to use as armor, but with a crack of genuineness running through the words. Gabriel looked up, and for the first time since the blonde woman had left, he smiled. A small, timid smile, but real, that lit up his face like the sun rising slowly on the horizon. "You don't need to apologize," he replied with a soft voice. "Honestly, your daughter just saved my night." Clara had already let go of her mother's hand and was climbing into the chair next to Gabriel, swinging her little legs with enthusiasm while leafing through the menu as if it were an adventure book. Laura hesitated for just a second before sitting, and in that moment something changed. The tension that enveloped the table began to dissolve like sugar in warm water, replaced by a strange sensation of familiarity, as if the three had already shared other meals in other lives. The conversation began the way important conversations always begin. Simple, without pretension, like someone who isn't trying to impress anyone. Gabriel asked Clara's name, and when she answered, he repeated it as if storing that information in some special place in his memory. Clara asked what he did, and when he said he fixed cars, her eyes lit up as if he had revealed himself to be a secret superhero. "You're like a car doctor," she exclaimed, and Gabriel laughed, a genuine laugh, warm, that made Laura realize that perhaps she hadn't heard anyone laugh like that in a long time, without calculation, without ulterior motives. Laura watched the interaction between the two like someone watching a rare spectacle. The way Gabriel leaned in to listen to Clara, how he answered her questions seriously but without condescension, how he treated each word from the girl as if it were important, valuable, worthy of total attention. There was no rush in him, no disguised impatience or furtive glances at his phone. There was only presence, and Laura had forgotten what it was like to be near someone who was really there, completely. When the waiter came to take the order, Clara looked at Gabriel expectantly and asked what he was going to eat. He smiled and said he would order the simplest dish on the menu, and there was something in the way he said it, without shame but also without false modesty, that touched Laura deeply. She discreetly changed her own order to something equally simple, not out of pity, but from a silent understanding that this moment didn't need pomp, didn't need performances. Clara ordered pasta with tomato sauce and announced that she would share with her new friend, and Gabriel accepted the offer with an exaggerated bow that made the girl laugh. Laura felt something inside her begin to melt. Those thick layers of protection she had built over the years, that armor of professional coldness and emotional distance that kept her safe but alone. Here was a man who had clearly been hurt that same night, perhaps many times before, but who could still be kind, could still smile at a strange child, could still make light of his own situation without bitterness. The food arrived, and they ate together as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Clara telling wild stories about her school, Gabriel sharing funny tales from the workshop without mentioning the humiliations, Laura gradually relaxing, allowing her shoulders to drop, her smile to appear without being forced. She realized she was truly laughing, not that polite laugh she used at business dinners, but a laugh that came from somewhere deep and forgotten inside her. Gabriel had a way of telling stories that made even the simplest moments seem magical. The time a cat entered the workshop and decided to live there, the day he fixed a boy's bicycle who had no money and received a drawing as payment. Each story revealed a little more about who he was. Not his possessions or achievements, but his heart, his way of seeing the world, his ability to find light even when everything around seemed dark. And Clara, with that inexplicable wisdom of children, had already decided that Gabriel was special, had already made him part of her small universe, and continued to pull him into conversations about unicorns and shooting stars, as if he had always belonged there. When dessert arrived, a single piece of chocolate cake that Clara insisted they all share, Laura picked up her spoon and looked at Gabriel, really looked for the first time since they had sat down. She saw the fine lines around his eyes, marks of someone who had smiled a lot despite everything. She saw the calloused but careful hands, which held the fork as if it were something fragile and precious. She saw the way he looked at Clara with genuine tenderness, not that forced attention that many men faked when they wanted to impress a single mother. And she saw something more, a kindness that didn't ask for recognition, a strength that didn't need to prove itself, a dignity that no one had managed to steal from him despite clearly having tried. In that moment, while the three shared that piece of cake under the restaurant's golden lights, Laura Farias, heiress to one of the city's greatest fortunes, woman who had learned to distrust everyone, heart that had been broken and mended so many times she thought it no longer worked, felt something impossible happen. She felt hope. And when Clara took a napkin, drew a crooked star with the crayon she always carried in her purse, and handed it to Gabriel saying, "It's your lucky star," Laura saw tears shine in his eyes for a second before he blinked and smiled, tucking that napkin in his shirt pocket as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. The restaurant had returned to its gentle rhythm of discreet conversations and silverware tinkling against porcelain when the sound broke everything. A strange noise, muffled, followed by a sudden heavy silence that made all heads turn. A child at the next table began to turn purple, small hands grabbing at the throat, while the parents panicked, screaming for help with high-pitched voices that cut through the air like breaking glass. The waiter ran toward the kitchen. Other customers stood up not knowing what to do, and time seemed to slow down, each second dragging like thick honey, while a child's life hung by an invisible thread. Laura felt her body freeze, fear rising up her throat. But before she could fully process what was happening, Gabriel had already stood up and was crossing the hall with quick but controlled steps, without unnecessary rush, without drama, just pure purpose transformed into movement. He reached the child in seconds that seemed eternal, knelt beside him with a calm that contrasted brutally with the chaos around, and his hands, those same calloused hands that had held the fork so delicately moments ago, acted with surgical precision. Gabriel positioned the boy carefully, applied the Heimlich maneuver with calculated force, once, twice, and on the third time, the piece of food flew out, and the boy began to cough, to breathe, to cry, and that crying was the most beautiful sound anyone there had ever heard. The parents collapsed over their son, hugging him with relieved desperation, tears streaming down pale faces. And then they turned to Gabriel with gratitude so intense, it overflowed in every choked word they tried to say. But Gabriel just smiled, placed his hand on the father's shoulder gently and said something too low for others to hear. Something that made the man nod while the tears continued to fall. There was no performance there, no search for recognition or applause, just a man who had done what needed to be done because it was the right thing to do. The restaurant exploded in applause that echoed through the walls like thunder, and Gabriel returned to the table with slightly flushed cheeks, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, as if he had just done something completely ordinary instead of saving a life. Clara received him back, jumping in her chair and shouting, "You're a real superhero!" with such pure conviction that it made several customers smile through the tears that still shone in their eyes. Laura was paralyzed, looking at Gabriel as if seeing him for the first time, really seeing, not just the humble mechanic in simple clothes, but the complete man, the depth hidden under the calm surface, the courage that didn't need a uniform or title to exist. She had spent her entire life surrounded by men who spoke loudly about their achievements, who filled rooms with their manufactured presence, who measured their worth in zeros in bank accounts and titles printed on business cards. And here was someone who simply was, without needing to prove, without needing to shout, without needing external validation to know he had value. The restaurant manager came to the table with his face still pale, offering the meal on the house, saying that Gabriel was a hero, that he had saved not just a life but the establishment's reputation. Gabriel thanked with genuine humility but tried to refuse, saying he had only done what anyone would do, and Laura realized he really believed that. He couldn't see in himself what everyone else saw, didn't understand that his kindness was rare, precious, extraordinary precisely because it was so natural to him. She watched as he talked with the manager, refusing compliments with the same grace he had handled the humiliation earlier, and felt something change inside her, a deep understanding forming like crystals in saturated water. This man had been brought there to be ridiculed, to serve as cruel entertainment for people who thought themselves superior, and instead of letting that evil poison him, he had transformed the night into something completely different. He had saved a life, made a child laugh, showed a bitter woman that genuine kindness still existed in the world. When they were finally alone at the table again, Clara took Gabriel's hand and said with childlike seriousness, "You're the bravest person I know." Nah. And Gabriel, this man who had faced humiliations with dignity and emergencies with calm, who had maintained composure when others panicked, felt his eyes fill with tears once more. He looked at that small child with her big, sincere eyes, then at Laura, who watched him with an expression he couldn't completely decipher. Admiration, yes, but also something deeper, more personal, more dangerous. And for the first time in a long time, Gabriel Rocha allowed himself to believe, even for a fleeting moment, that perhaps he was worthy of being seen, of being valued, of being chosen. Laura extended her hand across the table and touched his, a brief touch, light but loaded with meaning, and whispered, "Thank you for existing the way you are." And those simple words carried the weight of years of loneliness, of empty relationships, of looking in wrong places for something that was right there in front of her, dressed in a simple white shirt and carrying a paper star in his pocket. The night had already deepened when they left the restaurant, and the fresh street air brought with it that clarity that only comes after intense moments, when reality begins to reorganize around experiences that have changed something fundamental inside. Clara had fallen asleep in Laura's lap, small and warm, breathing softly with her cheek resting on her mother's shoulder, and there was something deeply intimate about that image. The vulnerability of a confident child, protected by unconditional love. Gabriel walked with them to the car, and it was there, under the yellowish light of the posts that painted soft shadows on the sidewalk, that Laura finally let her defenses drop a little more. She looked at him with tired but beautiful eyes, eyes that kept stories she rarely told, and began to speak with a low voice, almost confessional, like someone sharing secrets under the protective cloak of night. "You know, Gabriel," she said, and it was the first time she spoke his name aloud, savoring each syllable as if testing their weight. "I spent so much time surrounded by people who should make me happy, and I felt alone every single second." Laura didn't go into details. There was a dignity in the way she protected her pain, not out of pride, but self-preservation. But the words she chose painted a clear enough picture. A marriage that was more business than love. A family that measured success in figures and political connections. An entire life lived under the weight of expectations that left no room to breathe, much less to be happy. She spoke about how she had tried to fit into the mold they had drawn for her, how she had smiled at endless dinners where everyone talked a lot but no one said anything true, how she had woken up one day and realized she didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. And then Clara had been born, and everything changed. Suddenly there was a purpose, a reason to fight, a small soul that depended on her to learn what true love was. "She saved me," Laura said, gently adjusting her sleeping daughter's curls, "gave me courage to leave, to start over, to choose peace instead of appearance." Gabriel listened with such complete attention that Laura could feel it, not just hearing words, but absorbing meanings, understanding the things she wasn't saying aloud. "And your father?" Gabriel asked gently, without judgment, just genuine curiosity. Laura let out a small laugh, bitter but not cruel, and explained that Enrique Farias was a man from another time, built of ambition and tradition, who loved in his own way but couldn't separate human value from monetary value. He had built an empire from scratch, transforming a simple mechanic shop, and Laura smiled when saying this, a coincidence that didn't go unnoticed by either of them, into one of the region's largest automotive industries. But in the process, he had forgotten that people weren't engine parts that could be exchanged and optimized, that love didn't work like profit spreadsheets, that his daughter and granddaughter weren't extensions of the company, but human beings with hearts that beat and bled and needed more than financial security. "He's not bad," Laura said, and there was a gentle sadness in those words. "Just lost. Lost in a world he built himself and now can't escape from." Gabriel understood perfectly. He had known men like that, seen poorer versions of the same tragedy, people who worked so hard to survive that they forgot what they were surviving for. Gabriel stayed silent for a moment, organizing thoughts, and then spoke with that calm voice that Laura was already beginning to recognize as his. He told her about his mother, about how she was sick, fragile, but still insisted on smiling every morning and asking about his day, as if there was nothing more important in the world. He spoke about how he had learned from her that wealth had nothing to do with money. It was having someone who cared if you got home. It was being able to sleep with a clear conscience. It was knowing that your hands had done more good than harm in the world. "She always says I deserve good things," Gabriel admitted, and there was a raw vulnerability in that confession. "But I never really believed that until tonight." His words hung in the air between them like fragile butterflies, and Laura felt her heart tighten. This man, who had so little but gave so much, who had been raised by pure love and had learned the lesson perfectly, who looked at the world with kindness even when the world looked at him with disdain. How was it possible that someone like this existed, so genuine and complete, in a world that seemed to reward precisely the opposite qualities? Clara moved in her sleep and murmured something unintelligible, and both smiled. That automatic smile that people share when a child does something adorable. Laura looked at Gabriel and saw how he observed Clara with tenderness, and something inside her recognized something inside him, a silent language that didn't need words. She thought of all the times she had introduced Clara to men who pretended to like children, who asked mechanical questions and looked at their watches when they thought she wasn't watching. And here was someone who wasn't pretending anything, who didn't want anything from her except to be present in that moment, who treated her daughter as if she were precious because to him, genuinely, she was. "You know what's funny?" Laura said, her voice barely above a whisper so as not to wake Clara. "I spent years looking for something I couldn't even define, and my daughter found it in 5 minutes." Gabriel laughed softly, that warm sound that was becoming familiar, and responded, "Children see with their hearts, not with the eyes we learn to use when we grow up." And Laura knew in that exact moment that something had changed irreversibly, that this encounter wasn't just coincidence, that this man wasn't just someone kind who had crossed her path, but something bigger, something that tasted like destiny and second chances and beginnings that didn't ask permission to happen. When it was finally time to say goodbye, neither of them really wanted to leave. They stood there, prolonging the moment, finding small excuses to say one more thing, one more. Clara woke up enough to give Gabriel a sleepy hug and repeat that he was her hero. And he accepted that hug like someone receiving a sacred gift, with reverence and gratitude overflowing. Laura extended her hand, too formal for what they were feeling, but Gabriel took it and held it for a second longer than necessary, and in that touch there were unspoken promises, unformulated questions, hopes that didn't yet have the courage to speak their name aloud. "I hope we meet again," Laura said, and it wasn't empty politeness. It was real desire, need disguised as courtesy. "Me too," Gabriel responded, and his eyes said everything his words couldn't. They separated, carrying the night inside them, like a warm light in their chests, not knowing yet that the universe was already conspiring to bring them back to each other. That destiny had more plans, more encounters, more chances to transform that initial spark into something that would burn bright enough to illuminate even the darkest corners of their lives. 3 days had passed since that night at the restaurant, and Gabriel discovered it was possible to carry someone inside your chest without ever having truly touched them. Laura and Clara had installed themselves in his thoughts like permanent tenants, appearing at random moments while he tightened bolts or cleaned tools. He caught himself smiling alone when remembering Clara's laugh, when recalling the way Laura had looked at him when she said, "Thank you for existing the way you are." And then he mentally scolded himself for feeding hopes that seemed too foolish for a man like him. What would a woman like Laura Farias do with someone who smelled of motor oil and whose hands never got completely clean no matter how much he scrubbed? But the heart didn't understand logic and kept beating a little faster each time an unknown car stopped in front of the workshop, as if each customer could be her returning, as if the universe could be generous enough to give him a second encounter with that beautiful impossibility. And then it happened, but not the way Gabriel had imagined in his timid daydreams. He was heading home at the end of the afternoon, walking along the main avenue, when he heard the insistent horn and saw the traffic beginning to congest around a car stopped in the middle of the lane. An elegant black sedan with the hood smoking slightly, hazard lights on, and a woman trying to push it to the shoulder while irritated drivers honked and shouted things that shouldn't be shouted at anyone. Gabriel felt his body react before his mind fully processed, his feet already taking him toward the car. And it was only when he got closer that he recognized the profile. Laura, with her hair tied up haphazardly, frustrated expression mixed with a vulnerability she rarely let show, clearly out of her element and trying to maintain composure while the world honked its impatience around her. "Need help?" Gabriel asked. And when she turned and saw him, the expression on her face changed so completely that he felt his heart jump. Surprise, relief, and something more that shone in her eyes, like recognition that perhaps the universe really was plotting something. "Gabriel," Laura said, and there was so much emotion in that name that he felt as if she had said much more than just that. She began to explain, Overheating engine, lack of experience with mechanical emergencies, embarrassment at causing a traffic jam. But he was already gesturing for her to get in the car and let him push. His hands taking control of the situation with that calm competence that was so characteristic of him. In minutes, the car was on the shoulder. Gabriel had the hood open and was diagnosing the problem while Laura watched. And that's when a high, familiar voice cut through the air like a bell of pure joy. "Gabriel!" Clara shouted from the back seat. And before Laura could stop her, the girl had already unlocked her seatbelt and was running toward him with open arms, as if he were family she hadn't seen in years, instead of someone she had met only once. Gabriel crouched down to receive her, and Clara threw herself into his arms with a confidence that melted something inside him. This child who barely knew him but had already decided he was safe, was good, was someone who deserved her love without reservations. "I knew we would see you again," Clara said with absolute conviction, as if she had consulted the stars and they had confirmed. "I asked for you to appear, and you appeared." Gabriel laughed and exchanged a look with Laura over the girl's head. A look that said so many things without needing words, a silent communication that people who barely know each other shouldn't have, but that they had anyway. He held Clara for one more moment before gently placing her back on the ground and turning his attention back to the engine, explaining the problem in simple terms. Cracked hose, loss of coolant, nothing serious but needed to be fixed, before continuing. Laura asked how long it would take to get a tow truck, and Gabriel shook his head with a small smile, saying no tow truck was needed, that he had a spare hose in his backpack. Mechanic always comes prepared, and that he could fix it right there in 20 minutes. "I can't accept that," Laura said automatically, that reflex of someone accustomed to paying for everything, to not owing favors, to keeping distance through financial transactions. "Let me pay you. How much do you charge?" Gabriel stopped what he was doing and looked at her directly, and there was something in the intensity of that look that made Laura realize she had said the wrong thing without understanding exactly why. "Laura," he said, and the way he said her name was different from how anyone had said it before, without formality but with deep respect, without forced intimacy but with genuine familiarity. "Do you really think I'm going to charge you? After everything?" And Laura understood then. Understood that for Gabriel this wasn't work. It was something else. It was care. It was a way of being present. It was a love language he didn't yet know he was speaking, but that she was beginning to learn to decipher. She felt her face warm and nodded, swallowing the impulse to insist, allowing herself to receive without transforming everything into a transaction. Clara took advantage of the moment to pull a sticker book from her bag and began sticking shiny stars on Gabriel's arm while he worked, narrating stories about each one. This was the courage star, that was the lucky star, this other one was special because it glowed in the dark. 20 minutes later, exactly as promised, the engine was fixed and running smoothly. Gabriel closed the hood with hands that now had fresh grease mixed with shiny stickers, and Clara hugged him once more, this time sticking one last star right in the center of his shirt, on his chest, above his heart. "This is the most important one," she said with childlike seriousness. "It's the star that protects the hearts of good people." Gabriel felt his eyes burn and blinked quickly, crouching down to Clara's height and thanking with a voice that came out a little thicker than intended. Laura watched the scene with her heart tight, seeing her daughter, this child who was normally shy with strangers, who took months to trust new adults, completely open and radiant in the presence of this man the universe had thrown into her path. She approached and once again tried to offer payment, this time more gently, but Gabriel shook his head again, and when she insisted, he finally said something that changed everything. "Laura, you and Clara have already given me more than any money could pay. You made me feel that I matter, and that's priceless." The silence that followed was dense with meaning, loaded with everything neither had the courage yet to name. Laura felt tears sting her eyes and fought to keep them under control, aware that she was standing on the shoulder of a busy avenue, that it wasn't a place to break down, but also feeling that perhaps there was no right or wrong place to come face to face with truths that changed everything. She extended her hand and touched his arm, a brief but intentional touch, skin against skin, and she felt the warmth, the solidity, the reality of him, and said only, "Thank you, Gabriel, for everything." Obvi, he held that touch for a second before gently pulling away, smiling that smile that was already becoming so familiar, so necessary. Clara waved frantically through the window as they drove away, and Gabriel stood there on the shoulder, covered in grease and star stickers, watching the car disappear into traffic and feeling that something had changed irreversibly. That each encounter pulled them further into each other's orbit, that the gravity between them was becoming impossible to resist, that at some point soon, one of two things needed to happen. Either they would admit what was growing between them, or they would need to walk away completely before that connection became too intense to be denied, too deep to be safe, too real to be ignored. Enrique Farias hadn't built an empire by being naive or oblivious to the movements around him, and when his secretary casually mentioned that she had seen Laura talking with a mechanic on the avenue's shoulder, twice in the same week, with Clara clearly enchanted by the man, something inside him lit up like a silent alarm. He did what he always did when he needed to understand a situation. He investigated. It didn't take long to discover who Gabriel Rocha was, to trace a complete profile. Modest workshop in the working-class neighborhood, sick mother, no significant debt, but also no assets. Clean history, but completely ordinary. Exactly the type of man Enrique had spent his entire life trying to ensure never entered his family's orbit. It wasn't class contempt, he would tell himself. It was protection. He knew how the world worked, knew that differences in origin created impossible to seal fissures, that love didn't pay bills or build legacies. But there was something else too, something he wouldn't admit even under torture. Fear that his daughter would find happiness in a place that proved everything he had built, all the empire and all the wealth, wasn't really necessary for a good life. The next morning, Enrique let his silver Mercedes park in front of Gabriel's workshop, and the difference between the two worlds couldn't be more obvious. The car was worth more than the entire workshop, probably more than the building where Gabriel lived. He got out with that posture that powerful men develop, that way of occupying space that communicates authority before even opening the mouth. Impeccable suit and Italian shoes that had never stepped on a workshop floor. Gabriel was under a car when he heard the footsteps, and when he came out and saw who it was, recognizing him immediately from the few photos Laura had shown on her phone that night, he felt his stomach tighten but kept his expression neutral, wiping his hands on a cloth while waiting to see what the Farias family patriarch wanted in his humble workshop. "Gabriel Rocha?" Enrique asked, although he clearly already knew the answer, and his voice carried that tone that was between question and declaration, between courtesy and command. "Yes, sir," Gabriel responded, and there was dignity in the simplicity of that answer, a silent refusal to bow even before someone so obviously powerful. Enrique didn't waste time with unnecessary preambles. He was a businessman, accustomed to getting straight to the point, to cutting through inconvenient emotions until reaching practical facts. "I'll be direct with you because I respect your time," he said, and Gabriel almost smiled at the irony, as if a mechanic's time was really valuable to a man like that. "I know you've been meeting with my daughter and my granddaughter, and I need you to understand something. This can't continue." The words hung in the air between them like toxic smoke, and Gabriel felt something familiar settle in his chest. That old pain of being considered insufficient, of being measured and found lacking before even having a chance to prove his worth. But this time it was different, because this time it wasn't about him alone. It was about Laura, about Clara, about something that had started to shine in his life like light after years of darkness. "With all respect, Mr. Farias," Gabriel said, and his voice was calm but firm, without a trace of aggression, but also without submission. "I don't have meetings with Laura. We've seen each other by chance, and they are free to choose who they want to spend time with." Henrique took a step forward, invading Gabriel's personal space in a way calculated to intimidate, and his expression hardened from cold courtesy to something closer to veiled threat. "Do you really think you're suitable for her? For my family?" he asked, and there was so much weight in those words. Centuries of social hierarchy, generations of privilege protecting privilege, the invisible arrogance of those who always had doors opened and never needed to prove they deserved to enter. Laura needs someone who's on the same level, who understands the world she lives in, who can offer security and stability. "You're a good man, I don't doubt that. But kindness doesn't pay for private school, doesn't guarantee a future, doesn't protect my granddaughter from the realities of the world." Gabriel felt anger begin to boil in his veins, but kept it under control, breathing deeply before responding, because he knew that losing his composure now would be giving Henrique exactly what he wanted: proof that Gabriel was too emotional, too unstable, too inadequate. "Funny," Gabriel said, and there was an old sadness in his voice. "I grew up with nothing, Mr. Farias. But my mother never let me feel poor because she gave me love. I learned that security doesn't come from how much you have in your bank account, but from knowing that someone will be there when everything falls apart. And stability isn't having a lot, it's needing little, because you already have what really matters." Gabriel's words hit something in Henrique, some inconvenient truth he had buried under decades of ambition and empire building. But he didn't let it show. Men like him had learned long ago to build walls between what they felt and what they showed. "Beautiful philosophies," Henrique said, with a tone that transformed the compliment into an insult. "But the real world doesn't work that way. Laura has already suffered enough with a bad marriage. She doesn't need more complications, more insurmountable differences, more reasons for family conflict. And Clara needs stability, not romantic experiments that will end when reality hits." He took out a wallet from his jacket's inner pocket, and Gabriel felt nausea rise in his throat because he knew what was coming. He had seen cheaper versions of this same script so many times, in movies, in stories, in the casual cruelty of the real world. "How much?" Henrique asked, placing the open wallet between them as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. "How much do you need to walk away? To leave my daughter alone and move on with your life? Be reasonable. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to solve a problem in a civilized way." Gabriel looked at the money, at those golden cards and perfectly folded bills that probably added up to more than he earned in 6 months, and felt something inside him solidify like tempered steel. He raised his eyes to meet Henrique's and said, with a calm that came from somewhere deep and unshakable, "I don't want your money, Mr. Farias, and I'm not going to walk away from Laura because you told me to. Not because I'm stubborn or because I want to prove something, but because she and Clara already mean something to me that your money can't buy and your disapproval can't destroy." Henrique closed the wallet with a dry snap, and for the first time, Gabriel saw something that could be reluctant respect pass through the older man's eyes, although quickly replaced by frustration. "You're making a mistake," Henrique said, turning to leave. "And when this ends badly, because it will end, it always does when the worlds are so different, you'll regret not accepting my offer when you could." He stopped at the workshop door and looked back one last time. "And as for Laura, I'll do what I need to do to protect her, even if it's from herself." Gabriel stood still for a long time after the Mercedes disappeared, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from contained anger, from sadness, knowing that this conversation was just the beginning of a war he never asked to fight. He thought of Laura, how this conversation would hurt her if she knew, how her father, who clearly loved her in his twisted and controlling way, was about to transform something beautiful into a battlefield. And for the first time since meeting Laura and Clara, Gabrielle seriously wondered if Enrique wasn't right, if he wasn't being selfish by allowing that connection to grow, if it wouldn't be kinder to walk away now before it became impossible, before hearts were broken in ways that couldn't be fixed. But then he put his hand in his shirt pocket and felt the napkin with the star drawn by Clara, and remembered the way Laura had looked at him when she said, "Thank you for existing the way you are," and knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that he couldn't walk away even if he wanted to, that something bigger than fear or common sense was pulling them together, that some stories need to be lived to the end, even when all the signs say to stop. Laura discovered about her father's visit that same night, not because Gabriel had told her. He had decided not to mention it, didn't want to put her in a position of choosing between him and family, but because Enrique made the mistake of assuming his daughter was still the obedient woman she had been years ago. He mentioned casually during dinner, between comments about meetings and quarterly numbers, that he had resolved that situation with the mechanic, and the way he said it, with that certainty of someone who always had their orders carried out, made something inside Laura break and rebuild stronger in the same instant. She placed her fork on the table with excessive care, that kind of control people use when they're on the verge of exploding, and asked with dangerously calm voice, "What situation, Dad?" And when he explained, when he described the conversation as if he had done everyone a favor, Laura felt years of silent submission dissolve like burning paper. "You had no right," she said, and there was steel in her voice that Enrique didn't recognize. "You have no right to decide who's part of my life. Not anymore." The discussion that followed was epic and necessary, decades of stored resentment finally finding voice. Laura confronted her father with truths he needed to hear for years, that his protection had become prison, that his love was so intertwined with control that she could no longer distinguish one from the other, that she had spent her entire life trying to be the daughter he wanted instead of the woman she was. Enrique tried to argue, talk about experience and wisdom, about having seen the world and knowing its dangers, but Laura interrupted him with cutting clarity. "You're not protecting me, Dad. You're suffocating me, and I won't let you anymore." She said that Gabriel had shown her and Clara something no man of appropriate level had ever shown. Genuine presence, kindness without agenda, the ability to see value in them as people and not as extensions of a surname or patrimony. "It's not his profession that matters," Laura said, and her words echoed those Gabriel had said to Enrique himself hours earlier, though neither of them knew it yet. "It's his heart, and Clara sees that. I see that. Why can't you?" Enrique left the room without answering, and Laura knew the conversation was far from over. Men like her father didn't change their minds easily, didn't give up on battles just because the first attack failed. But she had drawn a line in the sand and didn't intend to back down. That night, Laura sent Gabriel a message asking if they could meet at the park the next day, just the three of them. Nothing formal, just time together. She didn't mention the conversation with her father, didn't say she had discovered about his visit to the workshop. Some wars were hers to fight, and she didn't want Gabriel to feel responsible for conflicts that existed long before he appeared. Gabriel responded with a simple yes, followed by a star emoji that made Laura smile through tears she hadn't realized were falling. Clara, who was watching cartoons on the couch, noticed the change in her mother's expression and asked, "Are we going to see Gabriel?" And when Laura confirmed, the girl gave a shout of pure joy that echoed through the house and made Laura's broken heart feel a little more whole. The park was bathed in golden afternoon light when they met, that magical time when the sun paints everything in honey tones and promise. Clara saw Gabriel first and ran to him with the speed of a child who knows no hesitation, and he caught her in the air and spun her while she laughed. And Laura watched that scene, this man her father had tried to buy and push away, this child who had chosen him with instinctive wisdom, and felt gratitude so deep it hurt. They walked together through the park paths with no specific destination, just existing in the same space, and Clara filled the silence with her infinite stories about school and friends and dreams she had. They passed by a young mother struggling with a baby stroller that had clearly broken, a stuck wheel refusing to turn. And before Laura could suggest helping, Gabriel was already approaching with that natural kindness that defined so much of who he was. "Can I take a look?" Gabriel asked, and the mother, exhausted and clearly grateful for any help, nodded. He knelt on the park ground, his clean clothes touching the grass without hesitation, and began examining the stroller's mechanism with that total concentration he applied to everything. Clara knelt beside him, watching with fascination, asking questions he answered patiently while his hands worked. In minutes, he had identified the problem, a loose screw that misaligned the entire structure, and with a coin from his pocket improvising a tool, he fixed it right there. The mother thanked effusively, offered money he refused with a smile, and when she insisted on at least knowing his name to thank him properly, Clara stepped forward with pride of someone presenting someone very important. "He's Gabriel. He fixes things and saves people, and he's my friend." The woman smiled, thanked again, and went on her way, pushing the now perfectly functioning stroller, and Gabriel turned his attention back to Clara as if that small act of kindness were the most natural thing in the world. But someone else had witnessed that scene. Hidden behind an ice cream stand, Enrique Farias observed everything with an indecipherable expression. He had followed Laura there, not to spy, he would tell himself, but to verify, to make sure he was making the right decisions about how to protect his family. And what he saw didn't fit the narrative he had built in his mind. He didn't see a scammer trying to seduce his rich daughter, didn't see someone performing kindness to impress, didn't see any of the things he expected and kind of wanted to see to justify his actions. Instead, he saw a man helping a stranger without expecting anything in return, saw his granddaughter shining with genuine happiness, saw Laura looking at Gabriel with an expression he recognized because he had seen it on his own wife's face decades ago, before she passed away, and left a void Enrique had tried to fill with work and control. He saw, in other words, something real, something his money couldn't buy, that his influence couldn't fabricate, that all his attempts at social engineering couldn't replicate. Clara noticed her grandfather first, that sharp perception of children who notice everything, and before any adult could react, she was running toward him shouting, "Grandpa!" with unconditional joy. Enrique crouched down to receive her, and there was genuine tenderness in the way he hugged his granddaughter. This was the part of him that still worked, that still remembered how to love without conditions. Clara took him by the hand and pulled him toward Gabriel and Laura, completely oblivious to the tension that instantly charged the air, and said with that devastating honesty of children, "Grandpa, you need to meet Gabriel properly. He's the best person in the world." Enrique and Gabriel stared at each other over Clara's head, and the silence that followed was dense with everything that had been said in the workshop, with all the accusations and defenses, with all the walls men build when they're too afraid to admit they might be wrong. Laura took a step forward, positioning herself next to Gabriel in a gesture that left no doubt where her loyalty was, and said with firm but not hostile voice, "Dad, what are you doing here?" Enrique looked at his daughter, at his granddaughter holding his hand, at the mechanic who had refused his money, and something inside him, something that had become rigid and hard over decades building walls instead of bridges, began to yield. "I came because," he started, and then stopped because the words he had prepared suddenly seemed empty, inadequate for the moment. Clara filled the silence with her illuminated innocence. "You came to play with us at the park? That's great. Gabriel, this is my grandpa. Grandpa, this is Gabriel. You're going to like each other, I know." And there was so much pure faith in that declaration, so much certainty that the world worked simply and that good people naturally understood each other, that both men felt something inside them soften. Gabriel extended his hand first, a gesture of peace, of willingness to try, of dignity that didn't need pride to exist, and said, "Mr. Farias." Enrique looked at that calloused hand, clean but permanently stained by honest work, and for a moment it seemed he wasn't going to accept. But then he looked at Clara, at the way she held his hand and Gabriel's hand, as if she could create a bridge between the two through her own small body. And finally, slowly, he extended his own hand and shook it. The days following that encounter in the park were strange and tense, as if everyone were walking on thin ice, carefully testing how much weight the new fragile piece could support. Enrique hadn't given his blessing. Men like him didn't change overnight. But there were also no more attempts at direct interference, no more veiled threats or money offers. He watched from afar, silent and analytical, and Laura knew her father was processing something big, something that challenged decades of solidified beliefs about how the world should work. Gabriel continued his life with the same humility as always, working at the workshop, caring for his mother, seeing Laura and Clara when possible, but always with a sense of being on probation, being evaluated by criteria he wasn't sure he could meet. He didn't let this change who he was. He continued being kind, continued helping people without expecting returns, continued being exactly the man who had made Laura and Clara fall in love with him in the first place. It was on a Tuesday morning, without any fanfare or advance warning, that Enrique Farias appeared again at Gabriel's workshop. But this time it was different. He was alone, without the armor of the impeccable suit, wearing jeans and a simple shirt that Gabriel suspected he hadn't worn in years. There was no arrogance in his posture, no that way of occupying space that communicates domination. He seemed for the first time like just a man, not a CEO, not a patriarch, not a walking empire, but a human being trying to find words for something difficult. Gabriel cleaned his hands and waited, without hostility, but also without making it easier, allowing Enrique to find his own way to the words he needed to say. "I came to apologize," Enrique said finally. And those words clearly cost something to come out, each syllable carrying the weight of pride being set aside in favor of something more important. Gabriel nodded, allowing him to continue, and Enrique took a deep breath before proceeding. "I've spent my whole life building things," Enrique said, and his voice carried a tiredness that went beyond physical. It was the exhaustion of someone who had run a marathon only to discover they were going in the wrong direction. "I built a company, built a fortune, built a reputation. I thought I was building security for my family, but..." He stopped, looking around the modest workshop. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot that security isn't the same thing as happiness. That protection can become prison. That love without freedom is just another form of control." Gabriel listened in silence, letting this powerful man open up in a way he probably hadn't done in decades, and saw something he never expected to see. Genuine vulnerability, admission of error, the courage that comes not from never falling, but from getting up and acknowledging you were on the ground. "I judged you by your bank account," Enrique continued, "because that's how I learned to measure value. But my granddaughter, Clara, taught me something I had forgotten. She doesn't see wallets or cars or titles, she sees hearts. And yours is good, Gabriel. Better than many of the men I would approve of because they have the right papers." Gabriel felt something tighten in his chest, a mixture of validation he didn't know he needed and sadness for everything it had taken to reach this moment. "I didn't come here to take anything from you, Mr. Farias," Gabriel said softly. I'm not after your family's fortune or social connections. I just want to be present in Laura and Clara's lives. I want to make them happy if they'll let me. I can't offer luxuries, but I can offer presence, loyalty, love that has no conditions attached. Enrique shook his head, and there was suspicious brightness in his eyes that he blinked quickly to disguise. I know, he said, and that scares me, Gabriel. It scares me because if you're enough, and clearly you are, I saw the way my daughter looks at you, the way my granddaughter shines when she's near you, then what does that say about everything I built? About all the things I prioritized over simply being present? Gabriel didn't have an easy answer for that, so he offered only honesty. I don't think it's about choosing between the things you built and being present. I think it's about remembering why you built in the first place, and maybe using what you have to do more than just protect to really make a difference. That's when Enrique revealed why he had really come. He spoke about an idea he had been gestating since that day in the park, since he saw Gabriel fix that mother's stroller without asking for anything in return, since he realized there was a different way to measure success and impact. Farias Motors started in a workshop like this, Enrique said, making a gesture that encompassed the space around them. My father fixed cars for workers who didn't have much money, and he always said that keeping people on the road was keeping families together. At some point I forgot that. I focused on growth, expansion, numbers, but you reminded me of that original philosophy. He took out a folder that Gabriel hadn't noticed he was carrying and placed it on the workbench. I want to create a social program through the company, Enrique explained. Free maintenance and cost-price repairs for low-income workers, people who need their cars to get to work, to take children to school, to live their lives, but who can't afford the prices workshops charge, and I want you to lead it. Gabriel was paralyzed, processing the words, trying to understand if he had heard correctly. I don't understand, he said finally. Why me? You have mechanics in your company, qualified people with training. Enrique interrupted him with a gesture. Because you understand, he said simply. You live this. You know what it's like to have to choose between fixing the car or buying medicine. You know the people we're going to serve because you're one of them. And more importantly, he paused, choosing words carefully, because I saw you help that mother in the park. I saw you fix Laura's car without charging. I saw the way you treat every job, not as a transaction but as service. That's what I want this program to be. Not condescending charity but dignity, helping in a way that preserves people's humanity. Gabriel felt tears sting his eyes and fought to keep them under control. He thought of his mother at home, of the times they had faced difficulties, of how many times he had wished something like this existed when they needed it most. I don't know what to say, Gabriel admitted, his voice thick with emotion. Enrique smiled, a small but genuine smile, perhaps the first Gabriel had seen on that man's face. Say yes, Enrique responded. Say you'll help me do something that really matters. Say you'll teach me to be the kind of man my granddaughter already thinks you are. There was a moment of silence loaded with meaning, and then Gabriel extended his hand, not in deference but in partnership, in mutual respect between two men from different worlds who had found a common purpose. Yes, he said, I accept. Not just for the program, but because I believe you really want to make a difference, and I want to help with that. They shook hands, and this time there was no tension, no hidden agendas, just an honest agreement between two people who had started as adversaries, but were choosing to become allies. Enrique held the grip a little longer and said something Gabriel never expected to hear. You gave something back to my daughter that I couldn't give her. Peace. You brought light back to her eyes, and I'm grateful for that, even though it took me a while to admit it. When Enrique finally left the workshop, Gabriel stood still for a long time, holding the folder containing the program details, trying to process how his life had changed so completely in a matter of weeks. From mechanic humiliated at a rigged date to leading a social initiative of one of the city's biggest companies, from invisible to seen, from disposable to valuable, not because he had changed who he was, but because he had finally found people who could see the value that had always been there. He picked up the phone to call Laura, to tell her about Enrique's visit, but before he could dial, he heard the sound of a car stopping outside. And then voices, one he would recognize anywhere, and another small and high-pitched that made his heart automatically accelerate. Laura and Clara entered the workshop, and Clara ran to him as she always did, but this time shouting something that made Gabriel understand that perhaps this moment had been orchestrated. "Gabriel, Grandpa told us, you're going to work with him. You're going to be a hero to more people." Laura was behind her daughter, and her eyes shone with tears of joy, and she said nothing, just looked at Gabriel with an expression that communicated everything: pride, relief, love not yet spoken, but impossible to hide. And there, in that modest workshop that smelled of oil and metal, with Clara hanging on his neck and Laura smiling through tears, Gabriel Rocha felt something he had never felt before. He felt he had a home, had a family, had a place in the world, not despite who he was, but because of who he was. He felt that the silent kindness his mother had planted in him, like a seed years ago, had finally bloomed into something bigger than he could have imagined. Not just in relationships that made him feel complete, but in purpose that went beyond himself, in opportunity to multiply the same dignity and care he always tried to offer on a much larger scale. And when Clara whispered in his ear, "I told you that you were a hero," Gabriel finally allowed himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, she was right. Not because he had saved someone from choking or fixed cars or refused money, but because he had done the only thing that really mattered. He had remained true to himself even when the whole world said that wasn't enough, and by doing so had proven it was more than enough. It was exactly what everyone needed. 3 months had passed since that transformative morning at the workshop, and the Farias Motors social program had become tangible reality. Not just beautiful words on corporate paper, but real action touching real lives every day. Gabriel now woke up with a purpose that went beyond surviving, beyond just getting through days fixing cars and going home exhausted. He led a small but dedicated team of mechanics who shared his philosophy: treat each car as if it belonged to someone they loved, each person who crossed the doors as if they were family. The workshop Enrique had provided was larger, better equipped, but Gabriel had insisted on keeping it in the same working-class neighborhood where he always worked, because that's where the people who needed the service lived. And asking them to cross the entire city would be putting barriers in a program that existed precisely to remove them. Laura visited frequently, sometimes with Clara, sometimes alone, and there was something deeply comforting about seeing how she moved in that space. Not as an heiress visiting a charity project, but as someone who genuinely cared, who knew clients' names, who remembered the stories they shared. The relationship between Gabriel and Laura had deepened in ways neither could fully articulate in words. It was no longer about casual encounters or coincidences orchestrated by destiny, but about deliberate and consistent choice to be present in each other's lives. They hadn't rushed anything, hadn't forced definitions or labels, but everyone who saw them together knew exactly what they were witnessing. True love, building itself brick by brick, solid foundation made of mutual respect and genuine admiration. Clara had become the most beautiful bridge between the two worlds. She spent weekends at Gabriel's house, helping him care for his mother, who had instantly adopted her as an honorary granddaughter, and at the same time maintained her routine at the Farias house, where Enrique slowly learned to be a present grandfather instead of a distant patriarch. The child flowed between the two universes with natural ease, proving that class differences were artificial constructions that crumbled before authentic love. Enrique had changed in subtle but significant ways. He was still CEO, still commanded meetings and made strategic decisions, but there was a new softness in his eyes, a patience that didn't exist before. He visited the social program regularly, not to inspect but to learn, asking Gabriel questions about the people they served, listening to stories that reminded him of his own humble origin that had been buried under decades of success. There was one particular moment a few weeks ago that had deeply marked Gabriel. Enrique was at the workshop when a family arrived. Father, mother, and 3 children whose car had broken down on the way to the hospital where the youngest son was undergoing cancer treatment. Gabriel and his team worked quickly to fix the problem while the family waited, clearly anxious about missing the appointment. And when they finished and said it was free, the father had broken down in tears of relief. Enrique had watched everything from afar, and later, when the family left, Gabriel found him alone in the office, crying silently. And when he asked if everything was okay, Enrique had said only, "I had forgotten. I had forgotten what it's like when every penny matters, when a simple problem can become catastrophe. Thank you for reminding me." The official launch event for the program was scheduled for that afternoon. It would be something big, with press and local authorities, but also with the people the program served, because Gabriel had insisted they should be the protagonists of the story, not just anonymous beneficiaries. Laura was nervous in a way Gabriel found adorable. She had organized every detail with obsessive perfection, wanting everything to reflect the dignity and respect the program represented. Clara was even more excited because she had been informed she would have a special role in the event, though no one had revealed exactly what it would be. Gabriel was surprisingly calm, not because he didn't care, but because he had learned that life's most significant moments often happened when you stopped trying to control everything and simply allowed them to unfold naturally. He wore simple but presentable clothes. He had refused the suit Laura tried to buy for him, gently explaining that he needed to be recognizable as one of them, not as someone who had changed class when receiving opportunity. The event space was beautifully decorated, but without ostentation. Banners explaining the program, photos of some people who had already been helped, with their permission of course, an area for children to play while adults listened to the speeches. When Gabriel arrived with Laura and Clara, he was impressed by how many people had shown up. Clients he had already helped, neighborhood neighbors, workers curious about the program, and yes, also Farias Motors executives and press representatives. But what touched Gabriel most was seeing his mother there, in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse Laura had discreetly hired for the day, with eyes shining with pride, seeing her son at the center of something so important. He knelt beside her, and she held his face with trembling hands, saying only, "I always knew you were special." And Gabriel, this man who had faced so much with calm stoicism, felt tears flow freely, because there is no validation in the world greater than seeing pride in the eyes of the one who raised you. The speeches began. Enrique spoke first, surprising everyone with his honesty about having lost his way and being reminded by Gabriel about the fundamental values that should guide not just businesses but entire lives. Local authorities spoke about the importance of programs like this. Some clients shared emotional testimonies about how the service had made a real difference. And then it was Gabriel's time to speak. He went up to the small stage set up in front of the space, looked at the crowd of faces, some familiar, many unknown, all united by being there in that moment, and felt the words forming not from his head, but from his heart. "I'm not good with speeches," he began, and there were gentle laughs and understanding nods. "But I know about broken cars. I know what it's like when something you need to live your life simply stops working and you don't have resources to fix it, and the world doesn't wait, doesn't care, keeps spinning while you're stuck." He paused, organizing thoughts. This program isn't about charity, it's about dignity. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves mobility, deserves to be able to go to work, take children to school, visit people they love. And it's about doing this in a way that preserves their humanity, that doesn't make them feel like they're asking for favors, but accessing a right. Gabriel continued, speaking about his own journey, about the times he had been invisible or looked down upon, about how a small child and her extraordinary mother had changed everything by simply seeing him, really seeing him, as a person of value. He didn't mention Laura by name, but she knew, and felt her heart overflow, hearing how that night at the restaurant, which had started as a cruel trap, had transformed into a catalyst for so much good. "And I want to especially thank someone I judged wrongly," Gabriel said, looking directly at Henrique in the audience. Someone who had the courage to change his mind, to admit error, to use his power not to protect, but to empower. That's real leadership. "Thank you, Mr. Farias, for trusting me and for remembering why you started all this." The ovation that followed was genuine and warm, and Henrique waved in acknowledgement. With moist eyes, he no longer tried to hide. But the real magic happened when Clara, who had been restless during all the speeches, suddenly let go of her mother's hand and ran to the stage. Gabriel saw her coming and crouched down to catch her, and she grabbed the microphone before any adult could stop her and shouted with all the conviction of her 4 years, "This is my hero, and he's everyone's hero now." The silence that followed lasted only a second before the audience exploded in applause and laughter and some tears, because there was something about children's brutal honesty that cut through all layers of formality and political correctness and touched pure truth. Gabriel held Clara, who hugged him tightly, and looked at Laura in the audience. She was crying openly, without trying to hide, smiling through tears, and in that moment, Gabriel knew with absolute certainty what he had already suspected for some time. He was completely, irrevocably in love with that woman and that child, and they had become his family in all the ways that mattered. After the speeches, when the event transformed into more relaxed celebration with food and music and spontaneous conversations, Gabriel found a quiet moment with Laura away from the crowd. They were standing near a window that looked out onto the street where Gabriel's original workshop was, visible a few blocks away, and there was something poetically perfect about being able to see where he came from while standing in the middle of where he had arrived. "Thank you," Gabriel said, and Laura looked at him with confusion. "Why?" she asked. "For seeing me," he responded simply. "For you and Clara deciding I was worth it. For fighting for the right to have me in your lives when it would have been so much easier to just let it go." Laura took his hand and held it firmly, intertwining fingers. "Gabriel Rocha," she said, and there was so much in that name, so many emotions compressed into 2 words. "You never understood, did you? It wasn't you who was lucky to find us. It was us who were lucky to have you. To have you be exactly who you are, without apologies, without pretensions, just good, genuinely, deeply good." They stayed there for a while, just existing in the same space, without need to fill the silence with words. And then Laura said something she had been rehearsing for weeks. "Clara has been asking me for days when you're going to live with us, and I want to know the same thing." Gabriel felt the world stop for a second. "Laura, I don't want you to feel you need to..." She interrupted him by placing a finger on his lips. "It's not about needing, it's about wanting, about choosing every day to wake up and sleep in the same space as you, about building life together, not just spending time when we can fit schedules. I love you, Gabriel, and Clara loves you. And it doesn't make sense to keep pretending you're not a central part of our lives when you are." The words hung between them, finally said aloud after being silently felt for so long. And Gabriel felt something inside him release, some final tension he had been holding without realizing. "I love you both too," he said, voice thick with emotion. "So much it scares me, but yes, I want that. I want all of it." They kissed there, near the window with a view of where it all began, and it was the first real kiss between them. There was no more hesitation, no more doubt about where they were or where they were going. And when they separated, Clara was there, having found them as she always could, with a huge smile and a new paper star in her hand. "This one is for both of you," she said, carefully handing it over, "because now you're one star, shining together." And in that moment, surrounded by the happy noise of the event, celebrating second chances and rewarded kindness, Gabriel Rocha, mechanic, caregiver, unlikely hero, finally allowed himself to believe what Clara had known from the beginning. That he wasn't just enough, he was exactly what the universe had planned, exactly who Laura and Clara needed, and they were exactly what he had spent his whole life without knowing he was looking for. And so, in a workshop that smelled of oil and hope, surrounded by people who were once strangers and now were family, Gabriel Rocha discovered something the whole world tries to convince us doesn't exist. That kindness isn't weakness, that gentleness isn't naivety, that remaining true to who you are even when everyone says you should change isn't stubbornness, it's courage of the purest kind. He had started this journey as an invisible man, just another honest worker in a sea of people the world ignored, and ended as something much more important. He ended seen, valued, loved not, despite his humble origins, but including them as an integral part of who he was. Laura and Clara didn't try to change him, didn't try to mold him into something more acceptable to social standards. They simply embraced him, complete and imperfect and absolutely enough. And by doing so, they prove something we all need to remember, that true love doesn't require you to be different, just to be real. Enrique Farias learned something that powerful men rarely have the courage to admit, that he was wrong, that he had confused protection with control, that wealth can buy many things, but never the peace that comes from being surrounded by people who love you for what you are and not for what you have. He saw in the humble mechanic something he had forgotten existed in himself, the capacity to genuinely care, to measure success not in quarterly profits, but in lives touched, in differences made, in tears of gratitude from people who were finally treated with dignity. And by allowing Gabriel to lead the social program, Enrique wasn't just offering opportunity, he was asking to be taught, was recognizing there were things money couldn't buy, and that he needed to relearn before it was too late. Before his granddaughter grew up, and he realized he had been so busy building empire that he forgot to build memories. Clara, this small child who had orchestrated everything without knowing she was doing it, would continue growing with a lesson most people take a lifetime to learn. That human value has nothing to do with how much you possess, but with how much you give. She would see Gabriel every day, proving that heroes don't wear capes or have superpowers. They just show up, consistently, with hands willing to help and hearts that refuse to harden. And she would grow up knowing that her mother had the courage to choose love over convenience, authenticity over appearance, real happiness over manufactured security. These were lessons no expensive school could teach, riches no inheritance could transfer. They were treasures that could only be lived, witnessed, absorbed through daily example of how to live with integrity and brightness. But this story isn't just about them, it's about all of us, about every time we judge someone by what we see on the surface, each opportunity we missed to meet extraordinary people because we decided they weren't our type. Each connection we prevent from happening because we're afraid to cross invisible lines society drew to keep us separate. Question our own certainties about who deserves our attention, our respect, our love. How many Gabriels are out there, invisible and overlooked, carrying silent kindness that no one bothers to notice? How many Lauras are trapped in golden but empty lives, looking for something real in places that only offer imitations? How many Claras see truths that adults around them refuse to acknowledge? And how many Henriques need to witness unlikely love to remember what really matters, what's worth protecting, what deserves to be built? This story invites us to pause, to look again, So I ask you, with all sincerity and affection, who are you failing to see? What kindness are you ignoring because it comes wrapped in a form you don't recognize as valuable? What connections are you preventing from happening because you're afraid of what others will think, what difference might mean, how the unlikely can mess up the organized life you've built? Gabriel and Laura show us that the best things often happen precisely when we stop trying to control everything, when we let go of artificial criteria about who should be part of our lives, and simply allow heart to recognize heart. They remind us that courage isn't just facing obvious dangers. It's having the bravery to be vulnerable, to admit you were wrong, to choose love even when everyone says it's impractical, impossible, too unlikely to work. And perhaps, just perhaps, this story lights something inside you, a memory that you too deserve to be truly seen, not by the edited version you present to the world, but by the complete person you are, with all imperfections and beauties. You too deserve to find people who celebrate you, not despite your origins, your struggles, your scars, but including all these things as part of the beautiful mosaic that made you who you are. And you also have the power to be that person for someone, the one who sees beyond the surface, who recognizes value where others only see ordinary, who chooses kindness even when the world says it's naivety. Because in the end, Gabriel and Laura's story isn't about an unlikely fairy tale. It's about what happens when real people make real choices to treat each other with dignity, respect, and love that has no conditions attached. The social program Gabriel leads continues growing, touching more lives each day, proving that when you combine resources with genuine compassion, when you lead not from top to bottom but from heart to heart, small everyday miracles happen. Families can get to work, children don't miss medical appointments, people maintain their mobility and with it their dignity. And each car fixed is a reminder that all of us at some point break, not just our vehicles but our lives, our hearts, our faith that things can get better. And we all deserve someone who shows up with skilled hands and generous heart, who helps us get back on the road, who reminds us that being broken doesn't mean being beyond repair, that always there's possibility of starting over. This is the promise Gabriel, Laura, Clara, and even Enrique make us with their intertwined stories, that it's never too late to change, to see differently, to choose love over fear, connection over separation, hope over cynicism. That silent kindness eventually finds recognition, that light always attracts light, that the universe has mysterious ways of bringing together people who need each other at exactly the right time, and that the most unlikely love can be precisely the truest, because it wasn't forced or manufactured or calculated. It simply happened, natural as breathing, inevitable as the sun rising, right in a way that defies logical explanation, but makes perfect sense to the heart. So breathe deeply and carry this story with you, not as escapist fantasy, but as illuminated reminder that the world still has kindness, still has second chances, still has people who choose to truly see you. And when you leave here, pay attention to the people around you, to the invisible Gabriels who cross your path, to opportunities to be like Clara and see with the heart instead of eyes, to chances to be like Laura and have courage to choose authenticity over convenience. Because each of us can be part of stories like this, not as spectators, but as active participants, creating moments of light in a world that sometimes seems too dark, proving with our daily choices that hope isn't naivety, that kindness isn't weakness, that love, true, deep, transformative love, still exists and is still worth every risk we take to find it. If this story touched something inside you, if it made you remember that there's still beauty in the unlikely and magic in the everyday, leave your like. It helps us continue creating stories that warm hearts and rekindle hope. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, because here at Cultural Plus Love, each story is an emotional embrace, a luminous reminder that love still lives somewhere, waiting to be recognized. And in the comments, tell us, have you ever been surprised by someone the world said wasn't your type? Have you ever been the Gabriel or Laura in someone's story? Share with us, because your stories also matter, also shine, also deserve to be celebrated. Thank you for being here, for opening your heart, for believing it's still worth feeling deeply in a world that often teaches us to just skim the surface. Keep choosing kindness. Keep seeing with your heart. Keep believing the best stories are still being written. And perhaps, just perhaps, you're the protagonist of the next one. Until the next story, keep shining.